Everybody can get their seats, we'll get started. A quorum being present, the committee will be in order pursuant to notice. The committee is meeting to consider the committee rules of the 118th Congress and Committee Resolution 1, the staff hiring resolution. Without objection, any requests for a recorded vote may be rolled to the end of the meeting, and the committee may recess at any point. I now recognize myself to make an opening statement. I'd like to welcome the members of the Committee of Homeland Security to the 118th Congress, both our new members and those returning. I am honored to lead this Committee on Homeland Security. After a career dedicated to serving our country, I'm fortunate to be joined too by a group of talented members who bring unique perspectives and experiences from across our great country to advance our mission. And I thank the Ranking Member Thompson and all our members for the collaboration in finalizing our committee's rules so that we can get on to the business of holding the administration accountable and protecting the security of our homeland. Stood up in response to the tragic terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, the Department of Homeland Security is tasked with a critical role of protecting Americans from dynamic and persistent threats. This committee must ensure that DHS is fulfilling that mission in the defense of our homeland, a role that leaves no room for error. This committee has traditionally been one of great bipartisanship. Securing the homeland is an American imperative, and I hope for productive partnership where possible with my Democrat colleagues. Where there is disagreement, Homeland Republicans will be respectful, but will be forceful in offering our vision and our solutions. The stakes are too high for any other approach. We must recognize the pressing crises created by the situation and the threats to our homeland in unprecedented ways at our southern border. No longer will the committee tolerate the total dereliction of duty that has happened at our southern border. For over 2 years, at our southern border, there's been no semblance of law and order. Ensuring the sovereignty and integrity of our traditional borders is not a radical concept. We are a nation of laws, and the willful erosion of those laws is counterproductive to the fabric of our society. Border security is national security. We must know who and what is coming across our borders and through our ports of entry to keep Americans safe. The lack of support from the department and the Biden administration for the brave agents of the U.S. Border Patrol has been infuriating to witness. These men and women work tirelessly as they're forced to contend with the traumatic human toll of the border crisis on a daily basis, all while being vilified by appointees in the Biden administration and the media. There have been over 4.5 million migrant encounters since the Biden administration took office. Just this last December, CBP encountered the highest monthly total of migrants in the agency's history. Fentanyl and other deadly drugs continue to pour through our open southwest border, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans and destroying lives all over our country. Perhaps most alarming is the growing number of known and suspected terrorists attempting to enter the country between ports of entry, 98 in fiscal year 22 and 38 already in the first 3 months of this fiscal year. We will legislate as part of our commitment to America to empower rather than degrade and abandon our brave CBP personnel and frontline law enforcement. We will address the unimpeded flow of migrants and drugs to protect our homeland and our people. And make no mistake, we will absolutely hold the Biden administration and Secretary Mayorkas accountable for their negligence. We must also work further to secure our cyber border. Over the past few years, malicious foreign adversaries have made significant threats to our critical infrastructure. Cyber attacks continue to increase their sophistication and persistence. And if we don't have a sufficient defensive scheme in place, the outcome could be catastrophic. And I know this is a concern that is shared by both sides of the aisle, and I look forward to building on the committee's record of significant bipartisanship as we legislate success in the cyber area. Cybersecurity remains a top priority for our new House majority, especially on this committee, and I want to thank Speaker McCarthy for his leadership in taking bold action to strengthen this committee's cybersecurity jurisdiction in this year's House Rules package. Our charge has never been clearer. We will work to responsibly mature CISA, provide oversight of other component cybersecurity functions, and strengthen the security of our federal networks and critical infrastructure. This can be done without overly burdening the private sector, which is why I remain concerned with the Biden administration's regulatory approach. We will focus on building trust, partnership, transparency, rather than duplicative and ineffective regulatory schemes. Further, our oversight and legislative agenda will take a fresh look at DHS as a whole, with the goal of reforming it into an agency that is competent in and worthy of protecting Americans. As I said earlier, I hope for bipartisanship and look forward to working together, but we will hold this administration accountable for its shortcomings, especially at the department. Finally, considering recent events, I want to make it clear to all members of this committee how seriously I take classified material. As a former special operator, I know that anytime classified material is leaked or not stored properly, it creates a potential risk to the lives of men and women who serve our great nation. I will not tolerate any member jeopardizing classified information. We're here to do a serious job and will be presented with sensitive information, so it must be handled as such. While we may disagree on policy or approach for securing our homeland, that doesn't mean we need to be disagreeable. And I ask all members, both sides of the aisle, to remember why we're here today and every day, and to remain focused on facts and policy rather than on personal attacks. This committee's assignment will involve the most important work each of us will engage in throughout our time in Congress, and I am grateful for being entrusted with this task. I'm excited to get to work. I now recognize the ranking member of the committee, the gentleman from Mississippi, a friend of mine who lives not very far from where I grew up and where my parents still live, to make his opening statement. Mr. Ranking Member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome back to the committee. I want to welcome all of my colleagues to this session of the 118th. It's a wonderful opportunity to be on this committee, to take the charge seriously, and I look forward to working with you. As you no doubt recall from your service during the 116th Congress, this committee has a tradition and culture of bipartisanship because the mission of protecting the homeland knows no party affiliation or ideology. Last Congress, when John Katko was my partner as ranking member, he said this committee was, quote, where we could rise above partisanship for the good of the American people, unquote. Mr. Chairman, you will be just the fifth person to serve as chair of the Homeland Security Committee, which means you have a great opportunity to shape the committee's work and reputation. I appreciate how you have already set out to make bipartisan cooperation a key part of your tenure, and ahead of today's meeting, worked with me on a modest refinements to the committee's rule. I extend my hand in partisanship and commitment to try and find common ground whenever and wherever possible, just as Democratic leader Jeffries is doing with Speaker McCarthy. This Congress, we are fortunate to be joined by so many new faces that will add to the impressive legacy of this committee. Committee Democrats bring a wealth of personal and professional experience to this panel. I look forward to working with them to address the whole range of issues confronting the nation. While border security is an important DHS mission, the department has a wide range of critical missions that also demand attention. They include counterterrorism, domestic violent extremism, cybersecurity, infrastructure security, aviation and maritime security, and disaster preparedness and response. Last Congress, this committee successfully shepherded nearly 50 bills into law that address issues as varied as cybersecurity and school security. As we begin our work this Congress, I would encourage members to keep in mind that natural disasters and terrorist threats are not to be confined to the southwest border. Even as we rightfully give attention to conditions at the southwest border, we owe it to our constituents to work together on a full range of issues that concern them, their families, and communities. This month marks 20 years since I was first appointed to this committee. At that time, it was a select committee formed in the wake of 9/11 terrorist attack. Over the past 2 decades, I've seen the threat landscape evolve from being dominated by foreign terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS to the emergence of homegrown violent extremists, including some who participated in the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. We owe it to our constituents to remain vigilant regarding the full range of security challenges we face, including emanating from within our borders. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, and I'm going to take a second of personal privilege and just say, in terms of our mechanism of interacting with one another, while we may disagree at times, a reminder for everyone that if we feel ourselves getting frustrated with a colleague across the aisle, there are 760,000 Americans who sent them to this body. And if we're getting frustrated with that individual who sees the world a little differently than us, you're really getting frustrated with those 760,000 Americans. So if you keep that in mind, we can disagree on issues, but not be disagreeable. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Ranking Member, for your comments. I now recognize, thank you, Ranking Member Thompson, and other members of the committee are reminded the opening statements may be submitted for the record. I now recognize the Ranking Member for the colloquy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to speak out of order to engage in a colloquy with you on a number of procedural issues.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for the purpose of engaging in a colloquy.
Mr. Chairman, can you clarify how the committee will approach subpoenas and deposition in the 118th Congress? I yield to the chairman.
I thank the gentleman, and as the Ranking Member and I have discussed, I look forward to engaging in bipartisan collaboration where we can find agreement, as has been the tradition of this committee. It is our duty to ensure there is a proper oversight over the department and that there is transparency with Congress and the American people. Regarding the committee's subpoena authority, I pledge the same commitment to the Ranking Member that he pledged last Congress as chair. When practical, the full committee will meet to consider subpoenas, and only in exigent circumstances would I move to issue a subpoena outside of the committee meeting. And in that event, that the committee must issue a subpoena outside of a committee meeting, I pledge to do so in consultation with the Ranking Member. With regard to deposition authority, consistent with House rules and regulations, I will provide notice of not less than 3 days to the Ranking Member before a deposition is taken to afford the minority staff the opportunity to participate in such proceedings and to claim equally divided questioning time. With that, I yield back to the Ranking Member.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, what can members and witnesses expect with regard to administering oaths to witnesses? I yield to the chairman.
I thank the Ranking Member for the question. All witnesses who testify before this committee are considered to be under oath to testify fully. However, given the serious national security issues before this committee and the importance of reminding witnesses of their oath, I intend to formally swear in all witnesses that appear before this committee. And it is my expectation that subcommittee chairs will do the same. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, understanding the change in the House rules with regard to remote witnesses, I know that there are some situations where a witness may need to appear remotely. Would you commit to advancing requests for remote witnesses to your leadership should the situation demand? I yield to the chairman.
I commit to you, the Ranking Member, to expeditiously consider a request for a remote witness under the new strict requirements imposed by the House rules and regulations. I will take requests that meet those requirements forward to the Majority Leader, who is, as you know, the ultimate decision maker on such requests, as required by the House rules and regulations. I will allow such witnesses to participate remotely with approval of the Majority Leader. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finally, the committee has had a long-standing practice of allowing members of the full committee to be on a case-by-case basis, non-voting participants at subcommittee proceedings if they do not sit on the subcommittee. Will that practice continue this committee? I yield to the chairman.
I thank the Ranking Member, and I deeply value the contributions of everyone. And the committee's flexibility of accommodating requests for subcommittee participation will continue this Congress. As such participation requires unanimous consent, members are encouraged to submit any request to join a subcommittee's proceedings as a non-voting participant to me or my staff at least one day before the subcommittee proceeding, as consultation may take place.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
As previously noted, there are two organizational matters for the committee's consideration today for which I understand there has been bipartisan agreement. Without objection, I now call up the following measures to be considered in block: the committee's rules for the 118th Congress and Committee Regulation 1, the staff hiring resolution. The clerk shall designate the measures in block.
Committee Rules and Committee Resolution 1.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with. The measures were circulated in advance and printed copies are available. No amendments to these measures were pre-filed with the clerk. Are there any amendments to these measures at this time? Hearing none, the question now occurs on adoption of the measures in block. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and each measure is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, staff is authorized to make any technical and conforming changes. And before we close, I'd like to take a moment and introduce our new members and let the ranking member also introduce his side. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, Representative Tony Gonzalez from Texas, Representative Nick LaLota from New York, Representative Mike Ezell from Mississippi, Representative Anthony D'Esposito from New York, Representative Laurel Lee from Florida, Representative Morgan Luttrell from Texas, Representative Dale Strong from Alabama, Representative Josh Burkeen from Oklahoma, and Representative Eli Crane from Arizona. I'd also like to congratulate and recognize our subcommittee chairs for the 118th Congress. Representative Clay Higgins from Louisiana will chair the Border Security and Enforcement Subcommittee. Representative August Pfluger from Texas will chair the Counterterrorism, Law Enforcement, and Intelligence Subcommittee. Representative Andrew Garbarino from New York will chair the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Protection Subcommittee. Representative Anthony D'Esposito from New York will chair Emergency Management and Technology Subcommittee. Representative Dan Bishop from New York will chair the Oversight, Investigations, and Accountability Subcommittee. Representative Carlos Jimenez from Florida will chair the Transportation and Maritime Security Subcommittee. And lastly, I'd like to recognize our Vice Chair, Representative Michael Guest, my mom and dad's congressman from Mississippi. I now yield to the ranking member for the purpose of introducing our members from the Democrat caucus and the ranking members of the subcommittees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to introduce our new Democratic members. Troy Carter of Louisiana, who will be the ranking member of the Emergency Management and Technology Subcommittee. Sherry Tanador of Michigan, who will be the ranking member of the Transportation and Maritime Subcommittee. Seth Magaziner of Rhode Island, who will be the ranking member of the Counterterrorism, Law Enforcement, and Intelligence Subcommittee. Glenn Ivey of Maryland, who will be the ranking member of the Oversight, Investigations, and Accountability Subcommittee. Dan Goldman of New York. Robert Garcia of California. Delia Ramirez of Illinois, who will be the vice ranking member of the full committee, and Robert Menendez of New Jersey. And we are pleased to welcome back Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, Eric Swalwell of California, who will be the ranking member of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Protection Subcommittee, as well as Lou Correa of California, who will be the ranking member of the Border Security and Enforcement Subcommittee, Ms. Yvette Clark of New York, and Ms. Dina Titus of Nevada. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the ranking member. Without objection, I submit for the record the full list of members of the committee and each of its subcommittees. So ordered. Finally, I want to note that members have each given an oath that, pursuant to committee rules, must be executed before members may access classified information. I would ask that all members provide a signed copy of the document to the committee clerk before leaving today. There being no further business, without objection, the committee stands adjourned.